Well, hello and welcome to this lesson, which is all about the general system settings within Sage CRM. We're moving our way through the different topics of this current series of lessons around Sage CRM. And in our particular lesson today, we're going to be covering the knowledge needed to understand how to use many of the most common settings inside the administration area. These include how to refresh metadata and how to lock the system to allow system maintenance. I've logged on to Sage CRM as a system administrator, and here you can see that I'm looking at the admin menus. And the topics that I'll look at in this lesson are all within the system administration menus. Now you can see that I've gone through to administration system, and I now need to have a look at each of these in turn. So the first one is logging, but actually I'm not going to cover that now because there is a separate lesson within this series on logging, and so I'll skip that and instead have a look at the database settings. Now the database settings here contain a set of fields which are all to do with the way in which Sage CRM connects to its database. Now please note that I've made the assumption that I'm looking at a fairly standard Sage CRM implementation. If you have a license, if you have Sage CRM licensed for multi-server, where you've got multiple web servers connecting through to a single database, there will be a set of other fields present in there, and that's covered in another lesson looking at more complex setups for multi-server environments. But changes to database settings here, although you can click change, I would strongly advise you really have to think about what you're doing and not rush to make a change, because it's not trivial. Incorrect changes to the configuration may prevent Sage CRM from running. Changes to most of the fields result in automatic updates to both the connections that the eWare DLL, the main user interface, needs, and also the Java-based application. So it should cascade through, but it's very careful that we need to know what these field definitions are before we start changing them, in case we need to change them back to things that we should be. So the database ID you see here, the database password, the user ID, that can be changed. It's currently there as SA, but you can change it to anything that has ownership over the database. You can set up a particular database user that you want. You can integrate it if you're working within an environment that integrates neatly within a Windows environment, that you can work with integrated Windows NT security as well within a SQL Server environment. If you are working with passwords, there is a limitation. Please check the system administration guide, because there are some restrictions on what passwords can start with, some characters that would cause problems with escaping if they're the first characters. But generally speaking, you can see the port control here. You can set out the query timeout as well. So straightforward, changeable and customizable if you're working with Azure SQL, just as much as it's customizable whether you're working with on-premise Sage and Microsoft SQL Server. The next thing to consider is self-service, but in fact we have other lessons that cover self-service and the configuration and setup of self-service, so I won't cover that now, and instead I'm going to look at metadata. Now, when we're working with metadata, changes that are made through the user interface, Sage CRM should automatically refresh its metadata. So if you change, say, the layout of a screen, it should make the change straight away, so all users see that and pick that up. Now, this option here, though, exists to allow a system administrator to force a metadata refresh. And you can see there's a graduated set of things that you can choose, from refresh everything to just refresh certain specific things, to force a metadata refresh where there's a suspicion that the configuration change has not been picked up. The advantage to this is it doesn't require you to stop the whole system with an IIS reset, which could be of a disturbance for other devices that are using the web server. But note, if you are going to carry out a refresh all, or you're just refreshing the views, then this will have the effect of dropping all views that are then recreated automatically by Sage CRM. Now, that's going to cause users potentially a big experience, a negative experience, if they're logged on into the system. So you should lock out your users before a metadata refresh is performed. Now, we've obviously just discussed system behavior, so I'm not going to discuss that now. And instead, I'll have a look at locking. Now, this is the locks that show where people are currently accessing records within inside Sage CRM. So this is the list of locks that the system is currently handling. And you can see that there's a couple of users in the system, and they are actually updating records. So locks have been created, one on the company, one on cases. If another user comes along to make a change and wants to access a record within that is already locked, you will see a message. They will not be able to change the mode of the screen into edit mode. That will be blocked. And instead, you now get a message which lets the user potentially sort things out by sharing the telephone number. But what we also can do is the system administrator can drill down to inspect the details of a lock, and if necessary, delete it to force somebody's abandonment of the changes that they were making or the lock that they had placed on a record. The next thing to consider is timings. These are associated with service level agreements and escalation rules, and I've discussed that in another lesson, so I'm not going to look at that now. Instead, I'll jump across, think about web services, but in fact, that's covered in some details in the configuration of web services, so I can bounce on to the idea of keyword search instead. Now, with this screen, as we come in to examine this, we've got some particular options that we can pick out. We've got this is a read-only screen apart from the fields allow keyword search in CRM, the interval, and the maximum number of results. The keyword search is something that relies on the idea of index database to be able to run through and find in order to build an index for the find searches to be able to search for information. We've got two, if you like, speedy search type features, the quick search and the quick find, keyword search and the quick find. This is looking at what are the main names that you're looking at, and we can see that as we are carrying out our editing at this point, we can decide whether or not we want to use the feature at all, and that would change then the search screens that we might be using. The interval is to do with how quickly or frequently, I should say, the indexing is occurred, and then the number of records returned by the search. We'll come on to a little bit more about searching with quick find in a moment, but let's park the keyword search and move on to the .NET settings. These are covered as you would guess, within the .NET API lesson. So I'm not specifically covering them now, but we will now look at Quick Find. So Quick Find is the box that you have at the top of the screen. So where you've got the screen in front of you, I'm highlighting the Quick Find option within the menus, but right at the top, there is the search box in the panel that allows you to search for key terms across single line text, email, and URL fields on all company, people, case, opportunity, lead, solution, communication, order, quote, and custom entity records all at once. So there is a set of information that the Quick Find is searching for as a result of a service which is running as a background process. If we drill down to have a look at this, you can see that there's the ability to restart the Quick Finds, to force it to check things again if you think that it's stopped and it isn't pulling back the information correctly. You can see here that you can control the entities that are included inside the Quick Find as well. So whether you do want to use and have solutions covered as well as cases, that's up to you, as it's looking for the particular terms that people might type into the Quick Find box. Now, leaving that aside, I'll come out of this and look instead now at the lock system option. I talked about the potential need to lock the system when we were looking at the refresh metadata option. So this is the area in which the system administrator can lock the system to force people out so essential maintenance tasks can be carried out. Now, we are provided with a warning. It tells us how many users are currently logged on into the system and whether or not you want to continue to lock the system. It will have the effect that any of the system, any of the services that are associated with Sage CRM may well be stopped as well, and they'd have to be manually restarted. And so you'll have to check the services like the Advanced Mail Manager, the Escalation Server, the Keyword Indexer, and Quick Find. So these all exist as services that you'd have to decide to start up once more if they've stopped. The option for license keys, pretty easy to understand. All the fields are read-only in this area, and the screen is useful for allowing the review of license keys and the options that the license key contains. You can see here, for example, I've got everything that I could need in terms of the modules of customer service, marketing, etc., sales. I've got all of the development options that I need, and I can see also that I've got a concurrent set of licenses, logged on users scheme there. I can copy the license key, I can give it to support, they can confirm the options and whether everything is correct for me. So it's a useful screen to be able to easily read those. Now, the proxy settings, this is going back to the question of the interactive dashboard and the gadgets that may call external web pages. So as those calls go out to those external places, what are the credentials that are necessary to be able to access the proxy and go on beyond it? So this is where you would need to set up potentially the proxy that you are using. But the last thing that I want to consider is the system health screen. You can see here that the system health is all about monitoring the current state of the different Sage CRM components to prove whether or not they're working correctly. I've drilled down into my screen, and this is showing us the different statuses And I can tell from the amber system symbols that I've got in front of me that the configuration information is missing, in my case, from the Exchange synchronization and the email configuration settings. So I happen to know that I've not set these up, so I'm actually not worried about that. But there is something that is concerning. There's a red X next to the CRM escalation service, and that would need investigating. And this takes us back to what I was looking at earlier on, which is the idea of, was this a service that has perhaps stopped because I locked people out of the system earlier on? And yes, you can see if I open up the services console, I can see that the escalation service is set to run manually, and I forgot to restart this after I locked the system. So I need to restart it, and then I'll be able to get going. Well, I think I've covered the topics that I wanted to show you for this lesson. I hope that that's been of interest. We're going to go on next to look at logging and the document and reports configuration. But let's see if anyone has got any questions. Thank you and goodbye.